Welcome to the 2024 Joint AAZV EAZWV Annual Conference Recap.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. So y'all, today we have a very special Zoo News episode as we are going to be recapping the experiences at the joint AAZV EAZWV Annual Conference. And so what we're talking about here is a joint conference between American and European zoo and wildlife vets. And it was an awesome time. Actually, it still is an awesome time because this conference actually goes until midday on Friday, the day this episode drops. So I'm technically recapping something that I'm not done doing yet, but we're basically done. And I've talked to plenty of awesome people who you're going to get to hear from. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, a couple of quick reminders. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my interview episodes that drop on Tuesday or my Zoo News episodes that drop on Friday, even the Friday when there's a conference happening. And make sure you follow along on social media at Rossifari or on TikTok at Rossifari Pod. And yeah, that's really all I got to say. So we're going to do this just like we did last week's AZA conference recap. I'm just going to go from interview to interview. You're going to hear from a bunch of different people, including people not from the United States and people that are in vet school and people that are in different kinds of practice. And yeah, we got all the good stuff. So enjoy, y'all. And then I'll be back at the end to talk a little bit about my experience at the conference. All right. So tell me who you are.
Hello, my name is Meghan Togher and I've recently graduated from RVC in London. So I've got the new name Doctor, so you can find me on Instagram. And this is my very first conference, very first time across the pond actually in Canada. So I'm really excited to be here. I love all things zoo, always have done ever since I was a little girl. So it's kind of a dream come true being here, to be honest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to your first conference.
Thank you.
They become addictive.
Yeah.
I am sure I will see you in Kansas City next year. Now
See you then.
Yes. So you came here before like the main conference got started and did some of the, or at least one of the cool doctor sessions, as I'm going to call them, because that's what I know.
Yeah.
Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So because I signed up to this when I was a student, I got to actually get involved with some of the workshops as a student helper. They're kind of expensive, so that was a real help.
Nice.
But they're definitely worth it, I'd say. So I got involved in the neonatal immunology. So that was with a vet from the Mississippi Zoo. Really, really amazing to hear her go through essentially all things immunology related. So we talked about genetics, we talked about T cells, B cells, all that fun stuff you learn in first year vet school. And then
the T cells and the B cells. Again, I'm a drummer, but no, cool, very good. That's cool. And so, like, was it a hands-on thing or was it just a discussion? Or? So
it was 4-hour discussion. Yeah,
a 4-hour discussion.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So real long, but yeah, we kind of just went through everything from start to finish, and then talked about their recent advances with all their animals. So how they've really been able to find out more about immunology by looking at different bloods of different animals and species that they have, and how they're using other zoos around. I think it's just North America at the moment, but they're looking to go global to basically have a look about all the work they can do and go forward with that, really.
Nice. Very cool. And then what has your actual conference experience been like?
Oh, so fun. So I've tried to go to as many workshops as possible. I just feel like there's so much information out there that I didn't know. So I've gone to the hoof stock this morning. We've just had the carnivores. I thought was fascinating. And then yesterday was my favorite day at Zoo Day. So everyone's favorite day. So got to go and meet the polar bears behind the scenes.
How insane was that?
Insane.
So that is my second time meeting polar bears.
Is it?
And both times I was like, I couldn't talk for like a minute. I don't know what it is about them. They're bears, and I've met all kinds of other bears, and they're also kind of just big dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of way. Yeah. But at the same time, they're breathtaking.
Yeah. And then one of them, I think one of them even had like a stick between its mouth, and I was just like, yeah, definitely big dog.
Yep, that's amazing.
Big dog energy.
That's awesome. Did you do any of the other behind the scenes stuff at Zoo Day?
Yeah. So tried to sign up to as many as possible, to be honest. Yeah. So we did the giraffe experience. So met their two of their female giraffes.
One of them was more willing to meet than the other?
Absolutely, same with us. One of them just ran around in circles in the paddock and would come over, have a little sniff and go, no, not interested, and move away. And then we also did the orangutan experience. So saw their new canopies, which is absolutely amazing. The orangutans can go above you when you're walking around. So yeah, really, really cool stuff. And I think they're looking to expand that, and excited to see what they do.
All the way to the front of the zoo.
Really?
Yes. That's what they said, because I did that one as well. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah, that would be epic.
Yeah.
Imagine you're just walking through the zoo for the first time, and then there's just orangutans everywhere.
Just above you.
Yeah.
Just hanging out.
Just chilling. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So in the sessions in general, is there anything that you found, I know you've learned a ton, but is there one thing, maybe either sessions or posters, that really you were like, wait, what?
Yeah. Gosh, so much to be honest. Trying to remember, there was a penguin one yesterday that I was really fascinated with. Actually, I think a student from Illinois did it. The students at Illinois are so clever.
They're so clever.
Right? All of them with their talks, I was sat there going, you're what? Only third year? So yeah, students at Illinois, well done.
real quick interjection. Yesterday, I did the kangaroo and camel behind the scenes as well.
Oh, awesome.
And ended up being with 5 students from Illinois.
Yeah.
And they are all just the coolest humans too. Yeah. They're just very smart, but also really chill, really kind people. Good group.
Yeah, shout out to students of Illinois, really. So I was talking to one of them, and there were 2 girls, they were next to each other, and they were both talking about penguins. The one I was talking to was talking about Humboldt penguins and essentially the parasitology of what they found and what they can sometimes get infected with and things like that, and how they're working with biosecurity rules to improve and stop that sort of infection. And I think later on in the day when, at the orangutans, I was talking to, you might have met him, one of the orangutan PhD students.
Yes. That guy that was there. Yeah, I forget
absolutely.
His name, but he was very intelligent.
Oh, he was so clever. Yeah. So I was chatting to him at the orangutan experience, and he started talking about how orangutans don't always have the best memory. So you might show them an image, and then a few moments later you'll show them an image and they will not recollect it at all. And I think I was fascinated because he started talking about sort of the psychology of orangutans and relating them to human psychology. And I think he said something about orangutans potentially having ADHD. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's insane. That is wild. I've never even thought of any animals having any psychological differences, but we all do, they're so neurodiverse. So to think that animals are also the same, fascinating.
Yeah. Some of the research that's being done is so amazing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always amazes me is just what we do and don't know about the different species, because there are over 8,000 species just in AZA accredited zones alone. Yeah. And some of them we have all the research on, and some of them, even things that are really well represented, we don't really know much.
No,
it's crazy.
Literally. Yeah. And there's so much to know. And his passion for this, he's just talking about orangutans, but he was saying, all species in the zoo. He doesn't have the time for it, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
Who does? Yeah. But no, to see what they know, and even thinking that, how are they perceiving that image? Do they see colors? Do they see the image? Are they seeing black and white? We don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Is there anything else that you want to share from your time at the conference?
Just wanted to say thank you, really. It's been absolutely amazing. Everyone in Canada is so friendly. Big fan of Canada. Been to see the Blue Jays, going to the aquarium later.
Nice. I was actually thinking of going to the Jays game tonight. I'm not sure yet, but I'm thinking about it.
100% go.
Definitely going back to the aquarium. Already went there once, but it's so good.
Oh, it's awesome. Just really, I feel very welcomed here, and it's been really nice, and I can't wait to come back. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Nice chatting with you.
You too.
Doctor. All right. So tell me who you are.
All right. So my name is Sammy Mould. I am a current fourth-year veterinary student at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville with a strong interest in zoological medicine. So I'll be graduating here in May and hopefully going into an internship.
Very cool.
All right. And then my name is Lindsey Rice. I'm a current third-year student at the University of Tennessee as a veterinary DVM student. I'm also pursuing my master's with a hopes of, upon graduation, going the same route with an internship and residency into zoological medicine.
Fancy. So I know, before we get to the conference, I know that your school has some pretty good relationships with the zoo down there, and as do I. Love it down there. And so have y'all had any cool experiences with the zoo?
Yeah, so we are privileged that we have access to the Knoxville Zoo, and we actually, as an institution and as a veterinary college, we provide all the veterinary care for the zoo itself. So we get to go on a 2-week rotation and work with the zoo, and with that, we also work with surrounding wildlife rescues and different sanctuaries and such.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I was pretty jealous the first time that I was hanging out doing an interview at Knox and saw like vet students doing a thing. And I was like, oh, and they're like, yeah, these are our vets. And I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a nice leg up in the industry for y'all. So that's very cool. Now, in your third and fourth years, respectively, have you gotten to do any cool stuff at any zoos outside of Knox yet? Or have you built those relationships at all yet? Or is that why you're here?
I'll go ahead and start just because Sammy's in the middle of her clinical year, so she's getting ready to do all the cool things and start traveling to zoos. I have done a lot of my work in undergrad. So in undergrad, I actually did a carnivore keeper internship at the Nashville Zoo, mainly husbandry, but I did get to sit in on any vet procedures that happened with our animals. So that was prior to vet school. And then, while I haven't done any work on anything with Zoo Knox, I have helped in our exotics ward, not only helping as the coordinator for our voluntary care team for wildlife. So not only do we see animals from these different facilities, but we do take any wildlife that comes in on service. So I coordinate that, and that's an opportunity for preclinical students to come down, shadow, and actually get wildlife experience before clinics. And then on top of that, with my master's, I've been doing a lot of stuff with bears. So any bears that come in from state wildlife agencies or who are going to our local rescue, I have helped with their intake exams, blood work, just basic things as far as their veterinary care.
Nice. Very cool.
And I started much in the same way that in my first 2 years of vet school and my third year of vet school, I got involved in the wildlife department and our exotics department and just trying to shadow the veterinarians as best I can. But now that I'm in my clinical year, I've actually been very privileged that I'm currently doing an externship at the Jacksonville Zoo, which is fantastic.
Amazing.
So working a lot with them down there, and I'm going to go back there after this conference, actually. And then I've also been able to go to the Belize Zoo as part of our rotation at the school. It's fabulous. Definitely one of the top 10 experiences of my entire life. Would love to go back one day, multiple times, but we got to work with all the animals down there and experience veterinary medicine outside of the ivory tower of vet school, which was fantastic. And the people down there are simply wonderful. So it was one of the most extraordinary experiences.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Did you see the Colombian government is spending almost $4 million to relocate Pablo Escobar's hippos?
In Brazil, a school of piranha attacked and injured at least 8 people at a beach resort.
First fatal mountain lion attack in 20 years in California.
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You may have seen me on Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive or Shark Week. So join me and my friends as we break down animal news from around the world and discuss all things wildlife. Click here to unlock these animal mysteries.
That's awesome. Yeah, when we met yesterday at Zoo Day, we were talking about that a little bit, and I was like freaking out. Yeah, so very cool stuff. So what's your conference been like? First of all, why are two vet students so interested in being at this conference?
Yeah, so conferences are probably the best way to network in any career field. But in veterinary medicine, especially in zoo veterinary medicine, it's such a small world. Everybody knows everyone. So getting to these conferences, getting your face out there, getting to meet all the people is so important for advancing your career. And on top of that, we also get to present research. So I did a research project a couple summers ago, and that's coming out for publication eventually, currently in edits. But I was able to present a poster on that research at this conference, which is phenomenal, looks great on the resume, and is very important, especially as a zoo veterinarian. Research is a major part of your career.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't know so much about these animals. Exactly. It's a constant theme on here. And can you talk a little bit about, we'll get back to you, don't worry. But can
I'm just hanging in the wings, don't worry.
Can you talk about what you presented in layman's terms a little bit?
Yeah, so layman's terms, it's always a fun one. But
just remember, you're talking to a drummer.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'll pretend I'm talking to my brother. There we go. So I did neurological exams in one of our tortoise species, so the radiated tortoise,
Love
which
radiated.
is native to Madagascar. They're beautiful. Look them up. So in sea turtles, when they're go through traumatic events in the ocean, we often do neurological exams to try and localize any lesions that they may have to their spinal cord, to their brain, to their spine, to their limbs, what have you. And so we have a lot of studies on what's normal for those guys, but we don't have any for what's normal for terrestrial tortoises and turtles. So my project was looking at normal to try and establish those normal values for neurological exams, because we see trauma in these guys. They get hit by cars a lot. So it would be nice to know when I'm doing this exam, what works, what doesn't work. And then also, this test has some weird response that's not normal for me. And then look at, oh, wait, actually, in these guys, they don't have that response. So that is normal. So you can better diagnose any issues they might have.
That is so... first of all, thank you for doing that. That's really important. She just saluted, guys. Such a nerd. I love all the nerds at this conference. No, but so this is one of the things that shocked me. One of those like keystone moments of my life before doing this is that I had a pet chameleon and had to take it to Penn Vet, to their exotics department that they used to have. And they were talking, you know, the doctor was talking to the students and kind of asking them questions and getting very annoyed that none of them knew the answers. It was quite amusing.
Been there before.
But yeah, yep. Dr. Latney herself was incredible, of course.
Every single day of our lives.
Yeah. And so, but as she was talking, I was hearing her talking about turtles. And I was like, a chameleon is not a turtle. Now, I'm not a taxonomic expert, but I'm fairly certain that I can say that. And that's when I learned that, like, we have lots of medicine knowledge and medical knowledge about turtles, but not chameleons. Yep. But then, yeah, we know a lot about sea turtles because of all of the amazing rescue and rehab that we do and stuff. But radiateds, maybe not. But then red-eared sliders, oh my gosh, so much. Yeah. And so, like, and it's amazing to me to have learned how even just like species you think would be exactly the same, be it the various turtles. I mean, they're obviously a large, different number of turtles.
Yes.
But even like the 5 species of rhino. Stuff that work for one won't work for the other. And I'm like, oh, come on, they're all rhinos. Just stop it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how much we are figuring out for each individual species and how different and how the same they can be. It blows my mind.
With so many species in this world, a lot of it's extrapolation because you might not have research projects or knowledge of a certain species, normals, or anything about them, actually. But there are differences even within the same, like reptiles. They're all different. A bearded dragon is not a gecko, is not a tortoise. But we have to extrapolate a lot from those species that we do know simply because we don't have this knowledge, which is where research comes in. And it's very important to continue to do research constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then refine the research we've done. Like
Exactly.
which is why the Wild Animal Health Fund is so incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lindsey.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Back in here.
I'm here.
Yes.
I'm thriving.
So you came here to network as well and to learn?
I did. I will actually say that I was unfortunate last year to find out, with both of us being from Tennessee, the AAZV conference was at Nashville last year, which would have been prime.
No, let's be clear. Which was prime for those of us that were there. High five!
But I found out, unfortunately, about it a little too late to secure registration, hotels, money, college budget, not the best.
After we did that, I was worried that Lindsey was going to be like, and then we had like my a close family member died. And I was going to be like, okay, sorry. But I'm glad it was just budgetary issues.
It was just budgetary issues.
Good.
Student loans. And so I've honestly spent the better part of the last year, once they announced Toronto, I was like, okay, we're going. And so I spent the better part of the last year getting everything together and prioritizing this trip, simply because it all boils down to what Sammy said. Like, all of it is about networking and meeting these peoples. And I'm in a position where, Sammy's looking for internship and residency at this point, where I'm entering into my externships for clinic year. And some of these facilities that I've applied to have never met me. Mm-hmm. And so, AAZV offers this amazing opportunity called the Postgrad Expo. And it's where these institutions will come. And it was even better this year because you have the institutions from across the water, from Europe and other countries. And, they're all telling us about their internship and residency programs, but these are also the people that will tell me whether or not I get my externships for clinic year too. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of that. It was also just the fact of, this is probably the biggest conference I've ever been to, and I wanted to prioritize going to a conference at some point during vet school. And then Sammy and I talked about this at one point. It was actually hysterical. Some of the people that are in this room, I've never met outside of an email or outside of a Zoom call. Mm-hmm. And so some of them on the first day, we walked up to each other and we went, "It's nice to see you," like not on Zoom and actually in person. Mm-hmm. Because that's another beautiful thing that we have at UT is our doctors actually collaborate with institutions outside of UT. So we hold journal clubs for the exotics department, and that includes doctors from Chattanooga Zoo, Nashville Zoos. One of our doctors just recently went up to Pittsburgh Zoo. Nice. And so we get together on weekly Zoom calls. We go over journals, new publications, and it's a fantastic opportunity to learn and everybody kind of get up on the same page. And it also helps our residents who are studying for their boards exams to actually have that opportunity to study, but also talk with like a multitude of minds in the room. And then I just found out as of yesterday that I received an award for my master's to be able to have a travel grant to actually go present. So I won't be far behind Sammy when it comes to presenting my master's work.
Congratulations.
Next year, AAZV, put it in the books.
I like it. Yes. We'll be in Kansas City.
Yes.
Yes. And I will be looking for your poster or talk.
We'll find out.
Okay.
Who's to say? Maybe
you can just do both.
Maybe.
Yeah, just do another research project quick. Just knock it out.
Not?
You got time. You got a year. Come on.
I'll figure it out.
So, is there anything that you've heard at this conference that blew your mind? Like a speaker or a poster or even just talking to someone where you were like, holy cow?
For me, I think it was the plenary talk on Tuesday about emergency capture situations and like how different zoos handle their emergency teams and what precautions you have to have in place. Because it's like, even being an intern at a zoo that I worked at, we know those things exist, but it's like we're not privy to that entire knowledge. So it's like seeing how other zoos plan for these emergencies, but also other zoos being vulnerable enough to be like, hey, unfortunately one of our bears got outside and it shouldn't have. How do we fix that? And I just think that speaker was very engaging. If I'm not mistaken, he was from the Copenhagen Zoo. Yes. He was one of the doctors from Copenhagen. Correct. And so that's another instance of the fact that, we're so privileged to be here at this joint conference and that we're hearing from doctors from around the world who have very different viewpoints, especially it comes down to things like in Europe, they have no problem like feeding whole carcasses to their animals. It's not a public issue. Whereas over here in America, God forbid you feed a lion a whole carcass. It looks terrible to the media. And so just seeing those different perspectives, I think, has been very eye-opening being here.
Yeah, it's funny. On a recent Zoo News episode, I was talking about that again. And I've talked about it before, but just the difference between especially AAZA and AAZV with that kind of stuff. And literally brought up the draft that was mentioned in the talk on Monday, too, that became a celebrity, but they still just called. And you know, it was real interesting seeing in that talk the different reactions, because I was also chilling in the back of the room for that. And I could literally tell who was from a European zoo from the nodding. And like there were people that literally like shot their heads back, especially when they showed like the image of a lion eating giraffe. And I was like clocking the room and I was like, ooh, we still have that divide. But like, it's cool. Everyone's here to learn, and everyone, it's not like it's a negative thing. People are just, I think there's a little shock because we are very used to what we're very used to. Having a joint conference has been very cool. Also, when we did the Safe Red Panda thing at lunch today, I had an entire like international table, and I did not expect that. And I went over and I started to talk to them, and they were all like, yeah, what is SAFE? Because they're not part of AZA. They had not heard of the SAFE program. And I had to like stop my pitch and start over and be like, okay, do we know what AZA is? And they all did, which is cool, but no one had heard of SAFE at all. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is amazing. And I was making connections with people from Australia and London and all these places. And it was stunning. It was such a cool experience. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So anything that stood out for you?
For me, I really loved both of the plenary talks. It was really interesting to learn those differences between like the U.S. zoos and the European zoos. But I also found it absolutely amazing that we were able to learn that one of the speakers for the avian section has developed a PCR test, so a test that looks for DNA from Macrorhabdus ornithogaster. Wow, that's a mouthful. And that, which is a common fungal issue in birds. So especially in our little budgies, which are those little ones that you can walk in with in a lot of the American zoos. I'm sure we all know one.
Yes, they're so cute.
They're the best. But this is a frequent cause of death in these guys. So it's super, super cool and super groundbreaking that she has developed this test that will allow us to identify birds who have this fungal lesion, whereas previously these animals would have to die before we could fully say yes or no, because the other tests were just so inconsistent.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was my biggest, oh my gosh.
That's awesome. And the other thing that stands out to me about this conference is just, you don't just have those moments watching people speak. So again, going back to Safe Red Panda, which just happened, I'm talking to y'all right after that, so it's very fresh on my mind. Some of the Red Panda population managers from the European zoos came to the Safe Red Panda thing, which was very cool. And one of them, they had to leave, they had another meeting, and one of them grabbed me and was like, do you know about parvo and red pandas? Now, I am not a vet, but I am pretty up on red panda things, and I do not. And I was thinking maybe it had something to do with, like, I know that Red Panda Network has put out research that, like, we need to vaccinate dogs from rabies out there because they're biting red pandas and stuff in Nepal. Cool. So I was like, does this have anything to do with like that? And she's like, no, I'm talking about in zoos. We don't really have a good test for it, but we are having a bit of a like problem where the non-canine or a non-canine version of parvo is affecting our red pandas. And it seems like U.S. zoos don't know about it. And I was like, okay, we need to know about that. And I have not heard about this.
No.
And I need to talk to my panda keeper friends about this. And like Safe Red Panda needs to, collaborate with the SSP about this. And like, maybe it's nothing over here. Maybe it's just a fluke thing over there. But like, that was at lunch, y'all.
Yeah.
That was just because some panda peeps got together. And that's incredible and could have legitimate impacts on the pandas in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
Like we could save some lives or maybe help develop testing to save the lives over there or something. And boy, when I say we, I'm using that word in a very stretchy way.
The big we.
But I do get to be the one to tell people about it. Literally, like our veterinarian, Dr. Stephen Marks for the SAFE program wasn't talking to her at that moment. She was at a different table. So I need to grab him later and be like, yo, let's run this up, whatever the chain is.
Right.
That's fascinating. And it was lunch.
Yeah.
You know?
That is one of the best things about it. And I know I've said it before, but like making connections, but being able to talk to people from all different walks of life, and all different points in their career, from veterinary students to like experts in zoo veterinary medicine. There are people who have written textbooks who are here giving talks, which is amazing.
Terrifying.
There are people I've looked up to my entire life and have wanted to be for my entire life who are here, who I've gotten to talk to, which is amazing. And it's just so cool to compare and contrast and just talk about veterinary medicine and zoos and all of those things.
And it's so open and honest.
Yes.
Like it's a safe space. Priya from Columbus grabbed me for a chat. We were just talking at lunch. I was actually supposed to be talking red pandas with one of my tables, and I saw her and we made eye contact and she kind of pointed at me and I was like,
I'm sorry, when the queen calls, you make time.
And I just had a quick conversation with her. And again, she was very open and transparent. And like what she told me is going to stay private. Sorry, listeners. But it was like we had a real moment talk. And I was like, but you're Priya. I'm just John, but you're Priya. You're
Priya.
Cool.
You're
and
Dr. Priya.
It was amazing. And that's like one of my favorite moments at this conference, you know, just because like, wow, but that's what this whole conference is.
Well, and it's like that kind of eye-opening moment happened to me. I believe it was yesterday, because it goes back to the whole, like, you've heard about these people in textbooks, or like I've talked to them through email, and Dr. Terrio got up there to speak about cheetahs. And they introduced her and they were like, this is Dr. Terrio. She's from here, 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 and here. And I turned and looked at her and like in a slow swivel, and I went, like the Dr. Terrio? Like the textbook Dr. Terrio?
She literally wrote the book on cheetahs.
And she looked at me, she went, yeah, that's her. I said, what are we doing here? How did I get here?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like I've spent a lot of this week, is wondering what I did right to be in this room with these people.
Budgeted effectively, for starters. We covered that.
Exactly.
Bingo.
No, that's really cool. But the beauty of it is that if you're here, you deserve to be here. And I can say that as a person who has felt a heck of a lot of imposter syndrome coming into it the way that I did, and who also doesn't understand most of the words that most of the speakers say.
Don't worry, me either.
But we all deserve to be here. Even me, we all do. And like you said, it truly is for everyone. And Dr. Priya was you once at some school, looking up to the textbook writers and being like, wow, this is cool. You know?
Yep.
And that's kind of magical.
It is. It is truly amazing.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that y'all want to say?
I will say I do feel like we do need to give a shout out to the Toronto Zoo for hosting us this week. They gave us a lot of cool behind the scenes tours yesterday during Zoo Day. Got to meet their polar bears.
That was the most ridiculous thing. Ridiculous. Just
love.
Ridiculous.
But no, they were just amazing hosts, and just the fact, you know, I honestly didn't know until we got here, until we got our welcome packets and things, that we're on Indigenous land, and like there's a whole land treaty and things of that nature. And I feel like the hosts of this conference have made it very clear that bond and that connection, and I've felt it throughout the whole time I've been here.
Yes.
Even stepping off at the Toronto Zoo, like it was very apparent that we were honoring those things.
Yes.
Even the first day of the conference, Monday, they went through a prayer and a sage with Indigenous leaders, and I think that being immersed in that kind of culture is not something you see often. So to know that was appreciated and brought to this conference just really made my heart happy.
They did that in Calgary for AZA as well.
Did they?
I think Canada just has a much better appreciation of their Indigenous peoples. The same is true with Australia. Whenever I deal with any zoos over there, it's always a thing, and it's a beautiful thing. It's great. We're just not very good at that in the States. So it's been really nice to see, and just how easy it is.
Yeah.
Like it's not, I don't know, it's not hard to do this. But yeah, good call. I'm glad that you mentioned that. That was very cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both for chatting.
Thank
Thank you for having us.
Yay. All right. So tell me who you are and what you do.
My name is Katherine Mosley. I'm an associate veterinarian at Nautilus Avian and Exotics Veterinary Specialist in Brick, New Jersey.
That's pretty exciting. And so This is a zoo vets conference, and you are not quite that. What made you interested in coming here?
Yeah, it's funny you even say that because I do always feel like a little bit of an outsider when I come to the zoo vet conferences.
Girl, I'm a drummer, so heard.
Yeah, but it's interesting because, I do work at a unique, clinic where I primarily am doing, private exotic pets, but we do work with a lot of aquariums and zoos as well. So I actually see quite a few zoo animals. And regardless, when it comes down to it, we're all seeing wild species, whether they're captive in a zoo or in somebody's home. So, of course, coming to, increase different perspectives and learn some new techniques, both on the medical side of things and also looking at, ethical issues and just finding, ways to collaborate and network and meet new people.
Yeah, that's cool. So what zoos do you get to see stuff from in Brick, New Jersey?
Yeah, so there's quite a few around us, and we actually work more with aquariums nearby.
Okay.
So some of the big players we work with a lot are going to be Sea Life in the American Dream Mall, as well as Jenkinson's Aquarium. And then we also do a little bit with Popcorn Park.
Okay, cool. That's a cute name.
Yeah.
I like that. Just to give a quick idea, what's like the coolest animal that you've seen from a zoo?
Oh, gosh. From a zoo, we do work with quite a few African penguins.
Nice.
That's probably one of my favorites to work with.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So conference, how's it been going?
It's been great. Yeah. And again, like I sometimes feel like a little bit of an outsider bringing in the perspective of the exotic pet world, but I've already seen lots of overlap with all the different species we're working with, but it's been great.
Good. And what would you say is one or two of the things that you've heard or seen that like really stood out to you?
Ooh, I think for me, one of the first things I think about are, literally the first day of the conference, the very first talk, kind of stressing the importance of, all of the animals we work with, again, whether they're in a zoo setting, in somebody's house, doesn't matter, deserve to live a life that has purpose. And of course, that was very zoo focused with examples of, having animals work for their food, giving them a day job, things like that. But I realized, there's so many parallels with that realm and what I'm doing day to day. For example, I'm constantly working with large parrots that are picking out all their feathers because they're bored, because everybody offers their food in a bowl. And even that talk alone, really inspired me to push my owners more to, initiate, more natural behaviors with things like foraging, giving them, their own day job, even though they're in a house versus in a collection setting.
No, totally. Citizens are cuckoo banana pants.
Yeah,
I can't imagine
cockatoos.
seeing a bunch of those as a vet in a private situation, knowing that every owner is going to be different and maybe not even know what they've gotten into. And
Yeah, I deal with a lot of grumpy, kind of 2 to 4 year old parrots that are just coming into their sexual maturity, and they're in such a smaller space than they would be in a zoo or, of course, in the wild. And it creates so many different behavioral issues if you're not pushing those normal behaviors on them.
That's cool that you are able to take that from this, though, and be inspired to go back and change. Because I honestly think, I love that these conferences inspire desire for change and just discussion in basically everybody. But I also think that, our accredited zoos are doing a pretty good job overall. Mm-hmm. I actually think that maybe some of those talks, will have a bigger impact on the animals that you're caring for than for a lot of zoo animals, just because in some cases, they're not always, you might need to push a little bit harder or make a little bit more of a change.
Yeah. And it's different. You have a different set of stakeholders in the private sector, of course, but I do feel like I have, more opportunities in a lot of ways to try to implement those new changes because I can get my hands on these animals a lot more often than, some of our dangerous zoo animals. It's definitely a little bit more challenging, I think, sometimes with the owners, and people think that they're doing the best for their animals. There's a lot of anthropomorphizing that happens and inappropriate behaviors between just human and, especially, again, parrot relationships where people just want to snuggle them like they're dogs and cats and different things, but that's really not appropriate for them. But yeah, definitely brings its own set of challenges, but also opportunities.
Yeah, of course. That's great. Very cool. So what other things have you done than just attending sessions? There's, Zoo Day and some of the different people have been going out and getting like random dinners and stuff. Have you been doing any of that fun stuff?
Yeah, I've been really busy.
Nice.
Oh my goodness. And trying to take advantage, of course, as much as I can of Toronto. Toronto's a really fun city.
Yes,
There's a lot of good
really
food,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of amazing entertainment. Yeah, I've already been over to the Ripley's Aquarium.
Nice, it's great.
Definitely went out to dinner a couple times already. Went to Zoo Day. We've been busy, but it's been so much fun.
Nice. We tried to get 15 people to a restaurant last night. We didn't realize it was going to be that large of a group. And I went to this like fancy, really cool, funky restaurant that we'd heard about. And I walked up and I was like, hey, so I'm going to start off by apologizing for this. And I'm also going to give the caveat that we don't need to all be at one table. But we have 15 of us here right now. And like 3 people congregated and were like, yeah, you guys need to leave. They said it very nicely, but they were like, we literally don't have room for 15 people, regardless of whether it's one group or not. We are very cool. And I was like, okay, well, we tried. But we ended up at a great place and had a good time. And, while we waited, the aquarium was right there and we get in for free. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they have a really cool collection over there. I was impressed with all the elasmobranchs that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I personally lose my mind about the cuttlefish.
Yeah.
Because we have, I volunteered at Aquarium of Niagara and we have dwarf cuttlefish, but this is a common cuttlefish, which is just a bigger cuttlefish.
Yeah.
And it's very cool to see. And then also I'm a sea turtle nut and they have 3 green sea turtles there and they're all gorgeous.
There's sea dragons too. They have a really impressive population of sea dragons, which you do not see very often.
That is correct. Yeah, no, absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to say about your time at the conference?
Ooh, I don't know. I think I just want to echo this opportunity to just continue collaborating with everyone. I feel like in these niche fields of veterinary medicine, unfortunately, there is a lot of kind of, I don't want to say, how do I want to describe this without, pushing too many buttons? I don't know. I feel like everybody likes to kind of stay with their one group, but there's so much to learn from each other, especially among like zoo versus wildlife versus aquariums versus the private sector. There's so much we can learn from each other, and we need to keep collaborating and doing these conferences and, welcoming all the different fields to keep learning from each other.
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun hanging. Cool. All right. So let's start off by you telling me who you are.
My name is Molly Gezella-Baranczyk. I am the new executive director for the American Association of Zoo Veterinarians.
Yes. So this is like your conference.
It is. Yes, I know. I'm coming in and learning about it, and I look forward to doing the full experience next year.
At Kansas City.
At Kansas City. Very exciting.
It's very exciting. So, I'm curious. So my listeners will know Rob, who is the retiring executive director emeritus, I believe is the title now.
Yes.
And so you'll be taking over that role. And so what has it been like being at this conference and seeing it with an eye towards that?
Yeah, I really love conferences in general. I think they're so important for creating community around your work, and there's no way anybody can know everything in these spaces. And so I get excited about conferences, whether I'm attending them for myself or I'm producing them for others to come together and have that community around them. And I have a lot of experience doing that for another association group I worked with in the past for wildlife. And so there are some similarities that I see, and there are some differences, and I'm just trying to understand what the community needs, and then what can we do? What can we do about that? What can we execute for them so that when they come, they can have a full experience?
That's very cool.
Yeah.
My listeners are gonna die right now, but can I step out of line and give you a suggestion?
Yeah, go for it.
While we're on here. So the other day, everyone was gracious enough to allow myself and some people from Safe Red Panda to have a lunch table reserved for us where we sat around and talked about red pandas. I gave a little pitch on why organizations should join up with Safe Red Panda. And but then on top of that, they just sat around talking about red panda health issues.
Yes.
And we were expecting maybe 6 to 8 people. We got 43. We took up 3 full tables plus.
Yes.
And I had more people tell me that little session, just talking about one animal in detail, sharing information with other vets, was their favorite part of this conference. And weirdly, none of them said that it was my pitch that was their favorite part of the conference. It was literally the ability to do that kind of thing. And so maybe as you move forward, look into some like smaller group, like things like that, focused on a certain animal or even a certain, taxa or whatever.
Yeah.
Because the response was actually overwhelming. And it was literally just people saying they had a thirst for that. And I was like, that's so cool. And it was cool to be able to provide that.
Yeah.
But we didn't realize that it was like a thing.
Yeah, well, actually, it is a thing. So there are a lot of different ways to facilitate groups. And there's a lot of people who this is their whole job. They work on facilitation. And when I went to grad school, one of the things that we did was a lot of those sort of facilitated type things. And there can be a lot of ways to structure it so that we can create community, but let them direct it. So, open spaces like what you just described, we're like, look, I want to talk about red pandas. Let's do that. And here's the group that's going to do it. And I think that kind of stuff is awesome. And it gives people the chance to digest together and talk and connect, because going to sessions is really important, but it's sort of a one-directional experience. So more of that sounds awesome, and I will definitely see if we can do that.
Awesome. I love that. And this is something that I love from talking to you a little bit and also talking to people that are working with you, is that you are very open to some new things and to sticking with what works, but also exploring what maybe can grow. And I'm really excited to see what you do with this organization.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do really love to explore things. And it can be, it can be interesting to just be an outsider and an experience and just look at things from all sides. So right now I'm, just trying to look at things and understand what's working, what do people want, what are possible, and what's going to help build that connection, whether it's on the membership side or it's on the conference side or it's in the, all these other programmatic spaces. So yeah, I'm pretty open. And I feel like in a new person, you always get to hear the stories and the requests. And so I am always like, yeah, tell me more about that. What about that works?
Nice. Very cool. So do you get to conference at all? Like, do you get to go to any of the sessions? Do you get to, like you personally? Yeah.
Yes, I did. I sat through a number of sessions. I try and kind of look through and pick a variety of things so I can see things from different sides. So there are certain speakers that I've been told I should go see, so I want to go see them, or there's certain sessions, or there's things like I know from my past work experience, like, oh yeah, I used to work with those animals, I'd love to see that session. And there's things I've never worked with. And so there was a talk on coral. I was like, I want to know about that. So I've been trying to go in as I can as I'm working through meetings and other things so that I can get a full picture.
Nice. Is there one thing that has stood out to you above all the rest that you've attended?
There were some really good talks in the big picture perspectives yesterday that I thought were pretty interesting, and they were all different, right? And so that was a really interesting one to sit through. I sat through that whole little grouped session, and that was really nice. Most of the plenaries have been awesome as well. Been trying to catch all of them.
I highly recommend tomorrow's.
Okay.
The doctor who is speaking is, I believe, the only person in the world, I could be wrong on that, but I believe the only person in the world who is double boarded in zoo med and behavior.
Oh,
and that
fantastic.
is a heck of a double boarding.
That is.
So,
and I came from a past experience of doing animal training in zoos. And so, I'm in. I'll be there.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah. Very cool. So, since you're in meetings and stuff all the time, what, as an executive director, what is this conference for you outside of what you're talking about, building the community for everyone else and stuff, but for you personally?
Yeah, I think it's a really important opportunity to connect in person with the community and observe them and understand, what their needs are. I see my role as executive director as really a facilitator. My job is to look at the organization and the membership and the attendees' need and see if I can find a way to facilitate that. And, 80% is the language, 80% of what you're saying isn't coming out of your mouth.
Right.
And so it's an opportunity to listen to people and also observe them and see where they're spending their time, what's working for them, and mirroring those two things together to be like, okay, what can we do to facilitate more of this, more of these conversations, more of this kind of experience?
Very cool. I'm very passionate about leadership. It is a topic that comes up on this podcast all the time.
Good.
And from what you are telling me both here and just in our previous conversations, I think you and I see it like that role in the same way, which makes me really happy to see.
Okay.
I'm excited. Like I said before, I'm really excited to see what your tenure brings here. I think it's very cool. And
Thank you.
I look forward to tagging along and reporting on what's going on and just being here to be a part of this community.
Well, thank you. Thanks for bringing me into the conversation. And I look forward to, seeing what we can do. I'm always open to feedback. So, as you have more experiences, please touch base.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So tell me who you are and where you work.
Hello, I'm Abigail Fiske. I am the veterinarian at the Saginaw Children's Zoo.
Yes, and you're not a child, which seems weird to me. I thought they would hire a child vet, but I guess not.
No, they need some adults there besides just the children, but we are open to all, not just children.
So let's start off by, conferences. We're at a conference, and I want you to kind of share how we know each other now, because this is our second year of friendship. And talk about like how that all came about.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was so much fun. We met last year at a conference in Nashville. Nashville was a fun time. And I don't even know how I met you. I don't remember, but I just know I met you at some point, and then we were together the rest of the conference, you and Zoe, and hanging out.
And Zoe has always had this in her life where people just like latch onto her and love her like immediately. And so I went up we were sitting together alone for a moment, and I went up to get like a quick drink or something, and I came back and you two were just best friends.
It's true.
I mean, like you two were just completely absorbed, and I was like, okay. And so then you and I chatted as well, and like we all became friends. But like you and Zoe just like instantly became besties and hung out all conference. And then we haven't spoken to each other. I think you and I messaged once on socials. I don't think you and Zoe spoke since last year.
No.
Until we were like, hey, are you coming to the conference? And you were like, I am. And then we've basically been hanging out nonstop again.
I know. And that's one of the things that's so nice about this conference, right? We go from like meeting each other and enamored, hanging out the whole entire time, or like on and off because you know so many people. And then you go a whole year and you might stay in touch, right? We had like one or two conversations or something. And, but you pick back right where you were, you pick back up. And I think that's what's really nice. And especially like Zoe, I do. Now that you say that, I remember sitting there and it was one of those things because it was my first conference as a veterinarian versus a student, and sitting down and being like, oh my gosh, all these people around me. I need to know some of them. I should start to know. And she was a sweet, quiet young girl. And I sat next to her and we chatted and just worked that way. But so it's nice to see friendly faces this year, right? And the difference, we went from fresh faces maybe a little bit, or for me kind of fresher. And then this year I can recognize a lot more people, a lot more, colleagues now as we're getting into the zoo world and everything. But it's really exciting.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So now that we're here in Toronto, what have been some of the perks? What have you enjoyed?
Let's see. So unfortunately, I didn't get to be a part of any of the workshops this weekend for, such reasons. But I don't know, Canada's always fun. I've been over to the other side of Canada. I've been to Vancouver, but never Toronto. So being up north is nice, and it's fun to see the culture of Toronto. Like there's so many people here.
I know.
It's such a city life. Saginaw is very cute and demure, if you will, but it's not city life, and I haven't been in a big city in a minute. So kind of seeing that and getting to walk everywhere has been fun too. So I like that a lot, and by the water and but yeah, Toronto, the city itself is pretty cool, and getting to see the zoo, even though that's outside the city.
Yeah, but it counts. It has the name.
Yeah, right, Toronto Zoo. But anything you've enjoyed specifically with Toronto itself?
Oh, I love Toronto. I've always loved the city. I come here a fair bit, and the food is always incredible here. And I really enjoyed, I love the aquarium. I love the zoo. I loved hanging out last night. Last night was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So you all have a solo doctor's dinner, which is for people that are solo doctors at a zoo or aquarium, but that Zoe gets invited to because everybody loves her, and I get invited to because everyone loves her. And so 15 of us went out last night with no reservation and tried to crash a couple of restaurants.
Great time.
Might have very politely been asked to leave one of them, not because we were being bad, but because we showed up with 15 people unannounced. But yeah, we found a cool place. We all some of us went to the aquarium for an hour while we waited for a table. Some of us went and drank for an hour while waiting for the table. Both going to facilities and drinking are things that zoo vets do very effectively. And then we sat for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, even though it was 15 of us hanging out, it kind of broke down into 2 smaller groups. And we were just, I don't even know what y'all were talking about. You and Zoe and some of the other people were over there doing your thing. And then I was talking to a couple of people, which led to some really amazing connections for the podcast, by the way. But it wasn't even about that. It was just bonding and being friends.
No, and it's nice because that's the part. The lectures are great. It's a good old time, but let's be honest, a lot of this is the network and the community you make, right? When you're at these conferences or just even in your day-to-day work life. But, people that we reconnect with and we get to chit chat with at dinner or at lunch or even those in-between breaks and everything. And it's nice because, we talked about some of the lectures in our little small group at dinner last night. And, the things that were that was controversial. Let's talk about it. Let's dive deep. They want to get us thinking about some of these big picture things, whether in the zoo world or the whole world in general, and then we dive on to other things that are not zoo related. So it's nice because how often do you get to do that? And I don't know, personally, I think sometimes we forget to go out and do those things outside of work, right? So keeping that balance of we can talk about all the animal things, and I think that's fantastic. And sometimes we got to take a moment and let's talk about what's happening next week just in the regular world.
Right, yeah.
And everything. But no, it's a great time, fun group of us.
Yeah, totally. So I'm curious, since you were there last year, which was just AAZV, and this year it is a joint conference with EAZWV, which are the European vets, to put it simply. And I'm curious if you've noticed a difference, because I have.
Oh, absolutely. in a good way, right? I think I can tell how many more people there is. There is a large amount of people here, which is really fun. Slightly intimidating, of course, especially as a young practitioner myself, but also very heartening and inspiring to see there's so many people everywhere working on the same stuff. We're all working towards the same goals in a lot of ways, but that's exciting. It's exciting to hear, different people's perspectives on whether it's certain topics or just even, medical advice or what have you. But I really like that. I think that's fun. And I think we've had some really good talks, both from the European side and the American side, because I think we've mentioned this in many aspects this week, we need to grow. We need to, change in certain aspects as an organization. And the only way to get better is to grow and change. And there's going to be growing pains. But if we don't have these conversations about all these different topics and hot topics and whatnot, we're not going to benefit, maybe the animals or conservation, whatever your specific goal is long term. So I think it's exciting. I really like it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I like the fact that so many of the European speakers are very focused on the fact that and we've talked about this on the podcast before, over there they don't believe in birth control for their animals. They let them breed and then just cull them. They will just kill, baby animals if they have extra. And they'll also feed them out and stuff. And that is something that is simply different between the two. And there are pros and cons to both approaches.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been very interesting hearing that come together. And there was one in particular session where it was talked about where I was sitting in the back and I'm really into watching crowds. And I could literally clock basically whether every single vet was US or European based on whether they were just kind of nodding along or had a slight look of horror on their face, even though we all know that's a thing over there and you can even respect it. But I think seeing pictures of it and hearing about it can be challenging for certain people over here. And I'm sure vice versa, the other way. I think it's been really cool.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, right? That's part of the growing pains of we won't get better unless we talk to people outside of our normal circle to be okay, what are you guys doing that's different than us? And maybe that's something we could implement, maybe not fully, but maybe slightly different and vice versa. That's how we make change, get better. That's a whole concept of trying to work together towards a common goal. But it's super fun. Did you see the collective changes of facial expressions and body language in the room? Which is not a bad thing. It's just, it's what some people are used to and some people are not. So I think it's also a good perspective to think about when you're talking the public eye and things, but it's just what's been around for longer, maybe in one facility or one country hasn't been around another. So it's interesting. It's cool. experiment, if you will, on a psychological level.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's been unique. I've really enjoyed it. Also, just all the accents. It's just so.
Oh my God, they're so great.
They're so good. They make me so happy.
I got a sad little like Minnesotan accent sometimes, and there's so many fun ones. I love it.
I was talking to someone from Perth, and I was like, I love your accent. And she was like, I don't have an accent. And I was like,
You're like, but you do.
She was like, no. And I was like,
There it is. There it is. Yeah, there's some good ones.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is one session in particular that has stood out to you? Like one thing that you heard this week where you're like, oh my goodness.
Oh gosh, that's a big loaded question. There's so many sessions. I feel like I have to look at the whole list.
Nerd.
I know. There's just, because there was a session. I mean, the plenary talks are really great, right? I really appreciate a plenary talk because it's just like to get us thinking about things. So like we talked about like the feeding differently, the nutrition realm. We talked about, the one, maybe it was a little bit more specifically, I felt like, oh, this is a good insight because I'm, new to a facility and still figuring out things both on the medical and the managerial side and whatnot. But the contingency plans talk, and we talk about not only are you worried about animals, getting out of enclosures in the sense that like you want to make sure enclosures and habitats, keep animals safe inside, but also what could come inside like a human. And those are things, I think about, but don't really think about. And then you see examples like at bigger zoos and whatnot that have had issues and how they've mitigated that. So that one was just like a very like, wow, this really happens. And a shocking one. So maybe that's like the shock factor. Wasn't my favorite. I mean, it was up there. I'm sure I could list several others and be here all day and go through each one and be like, I like this one for this reason and whatnot. But that one is just kind of a good reality check too, because, talking about, there are things we can do. We usually have a moment to think before we get to lethal things. And not everybody's going to feel that way. But for me personally, I took it as this is something I can take back to my facility and like utilize not all aspects, but the concepts of working together with our local fire, police, whatever network we have to make sure that our animals are safe, not only within the confines, but also if we have to bring in those public figures or those public safety officers for like emergencies and whatnot, because we've had our own fun times with things. So it's just something communication is more than just within the zoo, right? Like communication outside of the zoo too, whether public or your police officers and everything. So, but yeah, that one's a really fun one. I don't know if you had any really fun ones you liked.
Yeah, I've already talked about some of them, but there's been some really cool stuff. Yeah. Honestly, even just some of the connections made with like the Red Panda talk I did. And stuff.
Yeah,
like,
that was so
there
fun.
There were like really weird connections that were made and like things that I learned about that I'm not sure that we even knew about in the U.S. before this. And I was like, oh, okay. So cool. Yeah. So stuff like that's been a lot of fun. Is there anything else you want to say about the conference?
I guess I would say if there's something else I would share that it's a lot of fun in the sense of many aspects. You get to not only, you get your continuing ed. Let's be honest, a lot of us are here for continuing ed, but we're here to meet the people that are doing the things, right? We want to work with each other. We want to continue what we're doing because we all have a common purpose. And I think at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons I still really love this field in general, not just zoo med, but vet med in general, is because like there's a passion for animal care. Usually in the zoo world, there's specifically also environment, conservation, all of that. And like, I have a big passion for that. And most of these people in this room. So it brings me, so much like warm heart feelings, when I see how many people in the room, like working towards that. So that's the one thing I think is like, if I had to go out and tell somebody like, why, and they ask me, why do you go to the conference? I'll be like, that's why.
Right.
Yes, there's a lot of lectures I sit through and a lot of them are really good. But at the end of the day, it's like those common connections with people of like, this is why we do what we do and whatnot. So if that makes any sense
totally
to the
makes sense.
layperson.
And if not, I'll edit it down.
Oh
awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Anytime.
Let's go eat cookies.
Yes.
All right, so there you have it, folks. As for my time at the conference, I've had a really, really fun time. This is my second week in a row at a conference, and the second week in a row where, like, people know me now and know Rossifari, and it was a very good feeling knowing that like I get to be part of this community in a very real way. It's cool to see what the podcast has turned into over the last couple of years. And I feel like these conferences really show me how much growth has happened from year to year. And beyond that, I had the distinct honor of, so y'all may remember Dr. Robert Hilsenroth, who is the executive director, or I should say was the executive director of the AAZV, and is still retaining that role in emeritus status. But he has finally decided to retire from the role. And I say finally only because this is a man who deserves his retirement. He actually retired from his day job 19 years ago and then was pulled out of that retirement to run the AAZV. And if you haven't heard my episode with him, you should, because just an amazing dude and an amazing guest. Anyway, with Rob retiring, one of the things that was slated for this conference was a video presentation looking back at his 19 years with the AAZV. And I had the distinct privilege of putting that together, editing it, and honestly, some of the comments and stuff that came in were just like emails or little letters, and so I got to do voiceover for that, and then that got shown to the entire conference, so that was very meaningful to me. And then the other thing that really meant a lot to me, if you've been listening, you know that I am on the steering committee of the Safe Red Panda program now, and came up with this idea of hosting an informal lunch sit-down with anyone who's interested in red pandas, where I could talk to them about the SAFE program, and then some of the vets that are associated with the program could lead discussions about red panda health issues. And my genuine hope was that we would get 6 to 8 total people, and that includes the 3 of us from SAFE. And at the end of the day, 43 people came over. We had 3 full tables participating in these conversations, and they went over really well. Not only were people interested in the program, including some people from Europe who had never even heard of SAFE programs before, which was pretty cool. And I really enjoyed talking to them about that. But a lot of the vets involved just really enjoyed being able to swap health facts and personal stories about their red pandas with each other. And given that day at the conference, there were around 420 people in attendance in person, we actually got over 10% of the conference to come to our little lunch hang. And it was very last minute, and I made some we'll call them improvisational signs involving my bad handwriting and Sharpies. One of them just said "Fandas Unite." Had a lot of fun with that. But it all worked out, and people came over, and I don't know. This conference just felt really good, y'all. These last 2 weeks have felt really, really good. So I'm looking forward to the final sessions tomorrow. And yay, vets are awesome. So I'm very grateful to be a part of the AAZV community, despite the fact that I am not, in fact, a vet. So anyway, I want to thank, in particular, Rob and also Julie Best for helping me get to this conference and being just amazing friends and amazing partners in this process. And I want to thank all of my guests for being on here. And of course, I also want to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. Don't forget, you can become a patron for the podcast for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. And with all that said, the last thing that I have to say this week is don't forget, friends, the words Newsy credits backwards are Steiderk Yiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
Y'all, our banquet went really late tonight, and it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday, and I gotta be up at 6 for this conference again. So I'm gonna upload this to the world, and I'm gonna go sleep. But I hope y'all enjoyed this episode, and yeah, goodness.